Dear colleagues, it's my pleasure to be here and discuss with you error, culture and uncertainty. I want to speak about that from a very personal position and how I define it, how I analyze it, and how we work with errors in our working group and our surroundings. If I look into a dictionary, and my background is lexicography, several people of you probably use Leo, there is a broad range on how error is defined and what is called a synonym for this error. If you even look into the Microsoft thesaurus, that offers even more possibilities on how to translate it, and an option is as well fault. So you see there is a very broad range. It's not no more just interpreting it in a positive way, it is definitely in a negative way as well. So it is not just the translation. And the translation shows us, or that what is offered us as a translation shows us what we think, but on the other hand as well how the world and society interprets error, and as well it is mapped to our experiences that we have with errors and error around it. The eyes are useless when the mind is blind, and insight is a process. But what we're supposed to know might not be a certainty. It is always related to what we define it and what we know. Error is defining us as a human being. It allows us to learn if we make use of it in the right way, and it allows us to grow. The ability to learn and to grow is the core of living itself and keeps us alive, actually. So, there is a cultural framework in which we are embedded and which defines how we are seeing errors on the one hand, and on the other hand, how we are dealing with errors and how we should deal with errors to make them a learning approach and a learning culture. To deal with errors is nothing new, actually. Aristotle was already defining disaster from error and from an evil act, and thinking about or defining it related to predictability on the one hand, and on the other hand whether there is or in relationship to the intent. And we are just looking into the error where we say it is kind of predictable. If you are doing something, it is very likely that you will get into some errors, but there is no bad intent, actually. You want to increase. What we need, therefore, is a competence to manage our errors and deal with those, and to deal with them in a productive way. If you are looking at a very simple diagram and look into what costs do arise with errors on the one hand, and on the other hand, what is the benefit of errors, we start to look into it slightly from a different approach. And I just want to point out two things. There are errors that are of high benefit on one hand and of very low cost, so we should be very open and friendly towards that type of errors and try to make them happen, actually, to increase our knowledge, our experiences, and innovate. On the other hand, there are errors for sure that are very cost intensive and of very low benefit, so we definitely should avoid. But in between, there are probably the most innovative things to reach, namely errors that we are trying to risk because they seem to be of high benefit, but they are related to high costs as well. So what are we doing with that? We have to think about it, and we have to manage them in a meaningful way. The following few slides give you probably a slight insight into how we are dealing with errors and how we try to embed them as well into a research infrastructure, which means we are offering as well a framework, or thinking about frameworks where errors and where challenges are already related into a scientific framework and help us to deal with that. And this is a sign of an open innovation in research infrastructure in networked humanities. What I like you to look into probably is to see that we are focusing on challenges that are societal challenges as well, on the one hand, it would be as well a challenge to deal with an error and then re-embed it into the research process, dealing with all people of the society and co-design with them towards a better meaning and understanding. We are using for that approach design thinking and agile organization methods. Design thinking offers us the opportunity to address errors in a very productive way and do it in an iterative process and quickly actually get into the knowledge, seeing whether we had an error of a type of, let's say, a beneficial one and that leads us into innovation, or an error that would be of high cost if we proceed with the procedure at all. Exploration space is a virtual as well as physical platform for experimentation and innovation. So we try to put experimentation into the setting of humanities, and it was funded in 2017. It is the current contribution to the, of the Austrian Academy of Sciences to this open innovation in science research infrastructure and the focal point of its further development and movement. And it applies actually methods of open innovation in science that are mapped to the Austrian open innovation strategy. I'm very much delighted to let you know that we are presenting our mission in the framework of Ars Electronica Creative World 2018 in the setting of the BOSS dictionary, where we are teasing the reinvention of the dictionary and where we are introducing as well how we are addressing new types of working in digital humanities as a pilot. What we have learned so far is the process is messy, and we are kind of afraid of this messiness with the process. So it is definitely a chance and a challenge and we introduce and invite to work together to ease things. There is definitely a need as well to develop new skills and a new kind of openness to do so. We are in humanities anyway, and in our research very much working with heterogeneous data that are very often uncertain. And we are aiming to make this uncertainty visible, analyzable, and put it into a structured way. This is part of the scientific process, and there is a new project going on which is called Provide DH, that we are starting to think exactly about uncertainties much more than about what is certain in the research process, because we realize there is so much that is still uncertain and that is a part of our knowledge as well. So we are trying to sort out the knowledge process actually and embed knowledge management into that setting. And what we are calling here negative knowledge is the knowledge about what we have learned during the process in making errors and mistakes, and try to share that. But this sharing actually requires from us a very high degree of openness, of being aware of, being self-confident actually, and accepting that making errors is our process towards innovation. But that as well means that we are aware of just going into the right direction when we are making errors, and mainly avoid those that are of high cost and low benefit. Our goal is to make accessible this knowledge in a quick and low threshold way and open it together in a participatory process for knowledge sharing for societal benefit. Thank you so much.